Good morning, everybody. It's day 52 of my vlog, video log, blog, whatever you want to call it. People stress, part 4. We know people stress us. We get involved in stressful conversations with them. And I think we're often very unwise because when you try to talk to people about all that's wrong, and especially those who are completely in disagreement with you, the stress only gets worse. It gets harder and harder, and you get more and more stressed, and the strife increases, and the disagreement and the separation grows, and because there's a desire in us to try to change people's mind. It's a wasted desire. I grew up hearing a person whose mind is changed against their will is of the same opinion still, and so why are we trying to change people's minds? And you say, well, we have to. No, we don't have to, because all you're going to do is create more fighting. So what do you do when things are so crazy and there's strife? Does the Bible address this? And the truth is it does. But I want to make sure you understand what I'm saying. You cannot change somebody else's mind if they don't want to listen or if they don't want to change. You only get more strife and more stress for yourself. So why bother? And I mean that on a very practical, not even spiritual level. Why get into arguments with people who just aren't listening? The response biblically is just love them. No arguments, no strife, love them. Sometimes the best argument is silence. Jesus is standing before Pilate, and he's on trial, about to go to the cross, and it says Jesus answered him not one word, so much so that Pilate marveled. In other words, instead of being antagonistic toward Jesus, now Pilate is somewhat protective. Doesn't do a good job of it. And here's the other thing. If they are angry, avoid them. There can be no good outcome. Proverbs 22:24 says this, make no friends with an angry man, and with a furious man thou shalt not go. So much of the protest in our world is done by angry and furious people. Get away from it. Have no company with it. Even if their cause is just, get away from it. You will only increase your stress and your sorrow if you get involved. You will only fail in your hope to be a peacemaker. In the book of James, verse 120, chapter 120, it says that the wrath of man does not work the righteousness of God. In other words, there can be no good outcome from participating in the wrath of men, ever. If the person causing the stress is not trusting God, you cannot communicate with them. Now, this is another spiritual truth we're going to look at. They have no place in themselves for the things of God. So when you're trying to communicate things of God to them, there's no place for them to receive it. 1 Corinthians 2:14 says this, but the natural man, that's the man not trusting God, the person who is maybe a born-again believer, but they're not trusting God in the moment, or the person who doesn't know Jesus Christ at all, so they're not trusting God, the natural man receives not the things of God. Of the Spirit of God, actually, is what it says. For they are foolishness unto him. And think about that. You're trying to persuade somebody that thinks you're being a fool. Earlier in 1 Corinthians, Paul says that, actually, later in the chapter, he says that the preaching of the cross is foolishness to the lost world. It doesn't make sense. For they are foolishness unto him, neither can he know them, for they are spiritually discerned. There is nothing in a person who doesn't trust God that can connect to God's truth. So when you're dealing with people who are stressing you and who are creating more strife, don't argue. You need to be trusting God with them in your response. And you need to recognize that if they are not trusting God, they only hear you as a lot of noise. You are wasting your breath, and you need to be silent to them. It's not unloving silence. It's silence that goes to God and prays for them, to open a door for them to listen, to hear. And as we saw in people stress number 2, first we looked at 1 Peter 4:19, it says, and respond to them in well-doing. Love on them in actions. Jesus didn't argue with those who stressed him, but he did heal their sick. He did care for their needs. He did love on them. So the conclusion of our 4-part study so far on people stress is this: be like Jesus when it comes to dealing with people who stress you. Seek to make God look good in your response. May God bless you today.